Hi, welcome to week 1, lecture 2's, lecture 2, part 1 of 2. Today we're going to cover section 1.2 and 1.3 in this video lesson. And I actually decided to turn the camera on so at least you can see my face so that you know I am not a bot. Hopefully this makes you feel more comfortable. Whether or not you like it, maybe put something in the comments so that I know and get some feedback from you guys about what's working about these videos and what's not. So let's get started. So like I said, we're going to cover sections 1.2 and 1.3. Now, there's two key things that kind of come out of section 1.2. And the first one is sort of a quick explanation of why the study of logic is important. And the idea here is that English is a really, really messy language. And when people give arguments, they tend to be fast and dirty. And studying logic is a way of sort of slowing down and looking at more precisely what it is that the argument that was made by somebody. So as a quick example, one of the things you might notice is there's a subtle difference between saying something like, and this is just an example from the text, you might say, John will pass the test if he studies, and compare that sentence with John will pass the test only if he studies. So there is a subtle difference between if and only if, and when we study logic, we're going to look at precisely what exactly the difference there is. And not only will we be looking at sentences and their meanings a little bit more precisely and the logical operators in sentences, but one of the things we'll be focusing a lot is identifying arguments, particularly good arguments. So one of the things we're going to be giving a definition of is what an argument is, and then the question that we're interested in is, okay, what is it that makes good arguments? So one of the things straightforwardly you can think of then is that there's a difference between a good argument and a bad argument, and our notion of or our study of logic is trying to understand what is it that differentiates between the good arguments and the bad arguments. Okay, so that's just a brief overview of what quickly was said in 1.2, and 1.3 delves a little bit more into the details of what we're going to be studying. So we start off with the distinction, or with a particular property that sentences have, the sentences that are going to be of interest to us. So there's this notion of truth and falsity. And truth and falsity are properties of particular kinds of sentences, and particular declarative sentences. So if I say something like, John went to the store, this is a sentence that can be true or false. So truth and falsity is a property of the sentence. But this isn't so with all sentences. So if you think about another sentence like, go to the store, this sentence isn't true or false. The sentence is commanding. This is a command, right? You might tell John, go to the store. You can't say true or false to that unless you're being funny. But truth or falsity isn't a property of commands, nor is it for things like, did John go to the store? That's neither true nor false. Why? Because this kind of sentence is, it's a question. So truth and falsity are properties of declarative sentences. Maybe I'll put that here. Declarative sentences are true or false. And so it's the declarative sentences that we're going to be interested in. Okay. Now, when you see an argument that somebody presents, they often tend to be very quick and like I said, very rough. So you might hear something like, John will pass the course. And the reasoning you might give for the conclusion that John will pass the course is because he studied a lot. Because he studied a lot. So him studying is supposed to support the conclusion that he passed the course. Now, there's actually a lot of implicit assumptions that are going on in the background here. For example, you might say that studying a lot is the kind of thing that helps somebody pass the course. Now, we haven't actually said that explicitly here, right? This is something that we've skipped over and it makes common sense. But when we're studying logic, one of the things we want to be careful about is that we're extremely precise and we're very, very clear and explicit about all of the premises that you need in order to be able to support the conclusion. So here, we need to say a little bit more about linking up the idea that studying a lot means that you pass the course. So let's make this a little bit more clear and let's turn this into an argument that we'll have in what we'll call standard form. So we might turn this very quick, brief argument here into standard form by doing something like the following. Studying a lot for a course means that you pass the course. John studied a lot for the course. Therefore, John will pass the course. Okay, so here what I've done is provided the argument up here in standard form. So maybe let me put that in here. I'll put this is the argument roughly, and this is the argument in standard form. Okay, so in standard form what you do is you have one or two more sentences, which we will call premises, and I'll write that down again in a second. And these two sentences here, or these premises, are supposed to support the conclusion. And we designate where the conclusion is by drawing this line straight across here that says, okay, everything above this line, namely these two sentences here, are the premises, and the sentence that falls below it is the conclusion. And so this is what we're going to call standard form. Okay, so here we have an argument now that's been laid out explicitly. Here it is in rough form, and here it is a little bit more clearly. And this looks like it's a good argument, right? I mean, if you study a lot for a course, and that means that you pass the course, so if that sentence is true, and if the sentence here is true, that John studied a lot for a course, then it looks like the conclusion has to be true as well, right? That John will pass the course as long as these other two sentences are true. So one of the things you'll notice by the way I just spoke is if these sentences are true, then the conclusion must be true. So you can hopefully you're hearing in the way I'm speaking that I'm making appeals to what's called truth preservation. So what that means is it's not necessarily it doesn't mean that these sentences have to be true. It just says that if they are true, then the conclusion must be true as well. So we'll call this truth preservation. And we'll get it a little bit more into details about that later, but I thought I should at least mention it here already so that you have some idea of what it is that we're going to be after in this course. Okay, so let me now just tell you or give the definition of what an argument is, and then we'll call that it for this lesson. So what is an argument? An argument is a set of premises, at least having one or more, but typically they have two premises, and a conclusion that is supported by the premises. Okay, so you need to have at least two sentences here, right? One sentence that acts as the premise, one sentence that acts as the conclusion, and the premise is taken to support the conclusion, to give a reason or justification for it. So up here, John will pass the course is taken to be the conclusion. And here we have two premises. Premise one is studying a lot for a course means that you pass the course. So that's premise one, which we can put as P1. And here we have a second premise, which is that John studied a lot for a course. So that's the second premise. And we'll put that as P2. And so premise one and premise two are taken to support or provide justification for the conclusion, which we can just designate as C, which is John will pass the course. Okay, so that gives you a brief summary of what's going on in section 1.3. Make sure you read the actual chapter and review any of those parts of the lecture that might not have made sense. And if there's any questions that you have, please make sure to bring them up in class. Thanks.